I built my company from the ground up. Every sleepless night, every sacrifice, and every decision that could either make or break me, I gave it all, and it paid off. After years of hard work, I watched my company grow to a valuation of $50 million. It felt like I was finally on top of the world. But what I didn't expect, what no one could have warned me about, was the moment that would change everything. The moment when my father, the very man whose approval had been the driving force behind all my efforts, told me, with a smile on his face, "Your brother is the new CEO." It hit me like a ton of bricks. Everything I had built, everything I had sacrificed, suddenly seemed meaningless in that one simple statement. My father's words echoed in my mind, each one a dagger to my pride. For years, I had worked tirelessly, pouring my heart and soul into this company, and yet it was my brother who was handed the crown. My brother, the one who had always lived in my shadow, the one who had never truly understood the hustle and grind I had endured to get to this point. How could this be happening? But that moment wasn't just about a title. It wasn't just about the CEO position. It was about something deeper, something that had been brewing beneath the surface for years. My father's favoritism, his expectations, and his view of what success meant. It had all been building to this moment. And it wasn't just the slap in the face of losing the role that hurt. It was the realization that no matter how much I achieved, I was never going to be enough for him. The weight of it all made me question everything. Was it worth it? Was this company, this dream I had spent years creating, even truly mine anymore? The truth is, I could have stayed. I could have swallowed my pride, played along with the family dynamics, and taken the back seat while my brother took over. Maybe I could have found some peace in that, but something inside me snapped. This wasn't just about a job or a title. This was about my identity, my legacy, and my independence. I had poured my blood, sweat, and tears into Phoenix, the company I had built from scratch. But in that one moment, it felt like I had been reduced to nothing more than a second choice. I walked away. I didn't look back. And as I packed up my things, I realized that I was no longer fighting for validation or approval. I was fighting for something bigger, my own freedom, my own future. I wasn't just going to be a cog in someone else's machine. I was going to create my own path, even if it meant leaving everything behind. I didn't know what was next, but I knew that the road ahead wouldn't be easy. The pain of rejection stung, but the fire inside me burned brighter than ever. I had something to prove, not to my father, not to my brother, but to myself. I wasn't just going to walk away from everything I had built. I was going to show the world that I could do it on my own, that Phoenix could soar without the shadow of Rivercrest hanging over it. And that's when things really started to get interesting. Without the constraints of family expectations and corporate politics, I had the freedom to make bold moves. I started to make decisions that were once considered too risky, too out there. I had the opportunity to truly shape Phoenix in my own image, to take it to places I had only dreamed of. But with every step forward, the question lingered. Would I ever find peace? Or would I always be haunted by the ghosts of my past? I had no answers yet, but I knew one thing for sure. I wasn't alone. My team, the ones who had believed in me from the start, were by my side. Together, we would push Phoenix to new heights. We would innovate, we would create, and we would thrive. But as much as I was focused on the future, I couldn't shake the feeling that my father's shadow was still looming over me. Would he ever see what I had accomplished? Would he ever understand that I had built this not just for myself, but for everyone who had believed in me? And then, just when I thought things were finally falling into place, I received a call that would change everything once again. It was from a company I had always respected, one that saw something in Phoenix that even I hadn't fully realized yet. They wanted to invest in us, to take us to the next level. The offer was incredible, the kind of opportunity I could only dream of. But it wasn't just about the money. It was about the recognition. It was about finally having someone outside of my family who believed in what I was doing, someone who understood the vision and the passion behind Phoenix. But as I stood there, holding the phone, I couldn't help but wonder, was this the validation I had been waiting for? Was this the moment when everything would finally come together? Or was I still chasing something that would never come? Something that was always out of reach? The answer wasn't clear. The future was uncertain. But one thing was certain. I wasn't going to let anyone dictate my path anymore. Not my father, not my brother, and not anyone else. Phoenix was mine, and I was going to take it as far as it could go. But as I looked at the glowing offer in front of me, a new thought started to form. What if there was a way to bring Rivercrest along? What if, instead of fighting against each other, we could find a way to collaborate? Could I swallow my pride and work with the company that had once been my dream, the company that had ultimately rejected me? Would that be a victory? Or would it be a step backward? The decision was looming, and I didn't know which way to turn. But whatever I decided, I knew it would be the most important decision of my life, and I hadn't made it yet. I spent the next few days in a blur of meetings, phone calls, and decisions that seemed to pile up faster than I could handle. Phoenix was growing at an exponential rate, but so was the pressure. The success we had achieved so far was incredible, but with it came new challenges. I had built something from scratch, but now I had to make it sustainable. I couldn't afford to let my guard down, not even for a second. Every step forward felt like a tightrope walk, and the stakes were higher than ever. And then there was the call from Rivercrest, my father's company, the one I had worked so hard to leave behind. It was from Thomas Peterson, the VP of Operations, who I had known for years. Thomas had always been a practical man, a no-nonsense kind of guy who focused on results rather than politics. When he called me to discuss a potential partnership, I knew I had to listen, but I wasn't sure what I was getting into. Would this be a genuine opportunity? Or was it just a way for Rivercrest to reclaim what they had lost to Phoenix? My thoughts were a mix of skepticism and curiosity. But one thing was clear. This was a chance I couldn't ignore. Thomas, what exactly are you proposing? I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. We're interested in a partnership, Vincent. We've seen how Phoenix has evolved, and we believe you've created something revolutionary. Our board has authorized me to discuss a strategic investment. We want to help scale your operations, bring your vision to life on a global scale. We think there's room for both of us in this industry. There's no reason we can't work together. His words were smooth, professional, and they sounded genuine. But I couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to it. Was Rivercrest really willing to collaborate? Or was this just a way to bring me back into the fold? I had left that life behind for a reason, and I couldn't risk going back to being just another cog in my father's empire. I told Thomas I needed time to think, and as the days passed, the pressure began to mount. On one hand, the offer was exactly what we needed to propel Phoenix to the next level. The capital infusion could help us expand faster, and the partnership could open doors to new markets, new technologies, and new clients. But on the other hand, it felt like I would be signing away the independence I had fought so hard for. That night, I went for a walk through the city. The streets were quieter than usual, and I could hear the hum of the city in the background. I needed space to think. The problem with being an entrepreneur was that you didn't just build a company. You built a part of yourself into it. every decision, every success, every failure. It all became intertwined with who you were. Phoenix wasn't just a business to me. It was my future. My chance to prove that I was more than just my father's son. And the more I thought about Rivercrest, the more I realized how much I resented the idea of going back. I had left because I wanted to do things my way. Rivercrest was stuck in the past, clinging to old methods and outdated systems. I had seen it firsthand. They were too focused on preserving their legacy rather than evolving with the times. And yet, there was a part of me that couldn't ignore the fact that they were offering something I could really use. My brother Thomas and the entire board seemed genuinely interested in Phoenix's growth, but was that enough to make me take the risk of re-entering that world? Or would I be giving up everything I had worked so hard to build? I couldn't shake the image of my father's face the day he made the announcement. "Your brother is the new CEO." Those words haunted me, echoing in my mind every time I made a decision. The thing that stung the most wasn't just losing the CEO position. It was the realization that my father had never truly seen me for who I was. To him, I was just a part of the family business, a cog in the machine, a role to be filled. He never saw the blood, sweat, and tears I poured into Rivercrest. He never acknowledged my drive, my vision, or my potential. That sting was still there, deep down, and it pushed me to prove him wrong. I remember my first conversation with my brother after I left Rivercrest. He had always been the golden child, the one who followed the rules, who played by the book. He never understood why I wanted more, why I had to break away. "You'll regret this," he had said, his voice full of that smug confidence I hated. "You can't just walk away from Rivercrest. You're throwing away everything we've built." I had laughed it off, but deep down, I knew he was wrong. I wasn't throwing anything away. I was building something better, something more meaningful. Phoenix was my opportunity to create something that truly mattered, something that could change the world. But my brother's words lingered, and the more I thought about it, the more I realized that I didn't just want to prove him wrong. I wanted to prove to myself that I could do it without relying on the family name, the legacy, or the old ways. But then, as I stood there in my office, looking out at the city skyline, I got a call from my father. He rarely called, and when he did, it was usually about business. But this time, his voice was different. He wasn't the corporate titan I had known all my life. He sounded almost vulnerable. "Vincent," he began, his tone hesitant. "I know, things between us have been complicated, but I want you to understand something. You've always had the potential to lead. I've never doubted that. I just wanted you to see that there are certain ways of doing things that can't be ignored. You've always been the one to challenge everything. But sometimes, doing things the hard way isn't the only way." I was stunned into silence. Was this some sort of admission? A sign of change? My father admitting that he might have been wrong. It didn't feel like him, but there it was. A crack in the armor, a glimpse of something I never thought I'd hear from him. The phone call ended, and I was left standing there, processing his words. What did this mean? Was my father reaching out to me, trying to make amends? Or was this just another attempt to pull me back into the fold, to get me to conform to his way of doing things? I couldn't tell, but one thing was certain: the game had changed. The decision was no longer just about me. It was about the future of Phoenix, about what I wanted for myself, for my company, and for my family. As I sat back down at my desk, my mind raced with possibilities. What should I do next? Should I take the deal with Rivercrest, and with it, the risk of losing my independence? Or should I continue down the path I had started, carving my own future, free from the shadow of my family's legacy? The answer wasn't clear. But one thing was certain. Whatever choice I made, it would define everything that came after. And I couldn't afford to make the wrong one. The days after my father's call were some of the most confusing of my life. My mind was a whirlwind, constantly battling between the future I had built for myself and the legacy my father was now offering. Was I ready to take that step back into Rivercrest's world? Was I ready to forgive the years of disappointment and the feeling that I had always been in my father's shadow? The decision was getting harder, not easier, but then came the moment that changed everything. It was late one evening, after a long day of meetings and brainstorming sessions at Phoenix, when I received another call. This time, it wasn't from my father or even Thomas. It was from my brother. His voice on the other end was different. There was something in his tone that made me sit up straight, instantly alert. "Vincent, we need to talk," he said, his voice tinged with something I couldn't quite place. "It's about Rivercrest, about the future." I listened intently, my heart racing. He spoke quickly, words tumbling out in a rush. The board had made a decision that I wasn't prepared for. Rivercrest was looking to pivot in a big way, and they wanted me back. But this time, it wasn't to take the CEO role. No, this time, they were offering me something else entirely. A partnership. They wanted me to help steer the company into a new era, working alongside my brother as co-CEOs. For a moment, I couldn't process what he was saying. My mind reeled with the implications. After everything, after all the years of resentment, could I really go back to Rivercrest? Could I work alongside my brother, the very person who had taken the CEO role I had always believed should be mine? The thought felt like a betrayal of everything I had worked so hard for with Phoenix. But then something inside me shifted. Maybe it wasn't about going back. Maybe it was about moving forward, on my terms. The truth was, I had already built something incredible. Phoenix was more than just a company. It was my vision, my creation. And now, I had the chance to shape not just the future of Phoenix, but also the future of Rivercrest. This wasn't a step back. It was an opportunity to make the impact I had always wanted, on larger scale. The next few days were a blur. I met with the Rivercrest board, my brother, and even Thomas Peterson, who had been pushing for this partnership. The discussions were intense, with everyone laying out their visions for the future. Rivercrest was struggling to keep up with the industry's rapid changes, but Phoenix was thriving. The gap between the two companies had grown so wide that it seemed impossible to bridge. But what if, just maybe, we could? What if my experience at Phoenix could help Rivercrest evolve, grow, and become the company it once was? But in a new, innovative way. I knew this was the moment I had been waiting for, when everything I had learned at Phoenix could finally make a real difference in the world. But there was still one thing I had to do before I could move forward. I needed to make peace with my past. The night before the final meeting, I stood in front of the mirror, looking at the reflection of a man who had fought, struggled, and fought again to get where he was. I had spent so long trying to prove myself, trying to escape the shadow of my father and Rivercrest. But now I realized it wasn't about escaping anymore. It was about owning who I was and what I had built. The next day, when I walked into the boardroom, I was different. I was no longer that angry son, trying to prove his worth. I was a man with a clear vision for the future, and I didn't need my father's approval to make that vision a reality. I didn't need to be CEO of Rivercrest. I didn't need to take anything from them. I had something far more valuable than a title. I had the knowledge, the experience, and the drive to create something truly impactful. Whether it was at Phoenix, Rivercrest, or anywhere else, in the end, The deal wasn't about which company I belonged to, or whether I was my father's successor. It was about the legacy I was creating on my own terms. And as I shook hands with my brother and the Rivercrest board, I knew that whatever came next would be built on my own foundation, not the one my father had laid for me. Phoenix would continue to grow, Rivercrest would evolve, and I would be exactly where I was meant to be, leading the future, not trapped by the past. As I left the boardroom, walking through the glass doors of Rivercrest's headquarters, one final time, I realized something crucial. The true value of success wasn't in the title or the recognition. It was in knowing who you were, what you were capable of, and in never losing sight of the power you have to create your own path, no matter how many obstacles stand in your way. And as I looked out over the horizon, ready to face whatever came next, I couldn't help but smile. This was just the beginning.